Let's get started. It's 6 o'clock. We're not going to strictly follow the presentation today just because there's some makeup stuff I kind of wanted to cover. So I'm going to start by sharing screen. And I apologize, not all of you were here on Monday. Some questions came up and I wanted to take the opportunity to address them. So I'm going to start by sharing screen. Can you all see this?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. You do not have a copy of this because I just pulled it together this afternoon. One of the questions somebody asked, and we actually touched on it in the material today, but I wanted to give you an image that would maybe help you kind of remember, is what's the difference between logging on as a student like you did today, where you just click a link, and what you're going to do when you're a teacher. So all teachers will have classes that are on one of the Beaverton Literacy Zoom accounts. We've got, I think, 7 of those at the moment. So there are a lot of classes and a lot of meetings and stuff spread across those 7. They're bunched up in the morning and the evening, however. And so we had to have a lot of extra Zoom accounts just to be able to not have overlapping classes. So what you'll do when you go to the Zoom sign-in screen, you'll see, well, this is cut from the Zoom sign-in screen. So you'll need to enter an email address and a password. Okay. So what you'll see at the sign-in to Zoom is this, and you'll need to enter an email address and a password. All the email addresses for Beaverton Literacy take this kind of form, Zoom, and then a number at beavertonliteracy.org. So we're on Zoom 3 right now. So when I logged on, I typed in Zoom 3 at beavertonliteracy.org. And we're standardizing the password to English 2020. So unless something changes between now and the start of the school year, everybody will use English 2020 as the password, regardless of which Zoom account you're using. When you get in, you'll see this kind of greeting screen. Don't change anything or adjust anything in terms of account settings, which is part of what you see here. There's some other settings, menu items, but don't worry about any of the settings stuff. We're trying to keep that static. You'll go to the meetings tab. The meetings link is where the arrow is pointing. So you'll see this screen, you'll just immediately go to meetings. Maybe you've done this before, so I apologize. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence or anything like that. When you get into the meetings page, you'll see a long list of meetings. For example, this is, well, the first meeting on this list starts September 22nd. I actually went to page 2, and it's 9:30 to 10:45 class. If you hover your cursor over that line, if that's the meeting that you're, or the class that you're about to start, if you hover over that like this, a start button will appear. You'll hit start. Let's see. And then your meeting will begin. Actually, you'll go through a couple of other little things where Zoom says, do you want me to open the Zoom app? But really, in terms of Zoom, all you have to do is choose the meeting that you have once you get into the Beaverton Literacy account. Find the meeting, hit start, confirm to Zoom that you want them to open the app and start the meeting in that app. And you'll be in your meeting just the way I was a moment ago. One other comment about this entry and exiting process. When you leave a meeting, it's better not just to end the meeting. It seems like everything is done when you hit end meeting and you close out Zoom. But if you don't sign out of the BLC account, you'll still be signed in. And if you go do something else, it may still say Beaverton Literacy Council as your name. So it's not that you break anything by not literally signing out after ending the meeting, but it's a little bit slicker to end the meeting, to sign out after ending the meeting. So I don't think any of this is difficult, but I at least wanted to run through that since the question came up. Question?
Do we use the same practice if we're a teacher versus an assistant?
Yeah, no, assistants will use the student link. So only one person can go through this process in order to start the meeting. And it can really goof things up if anybody else on that same account tries to start a meeting while you're in a meeting. Things can get really messed up.
On that first piece that you said, Zoom and then the number, and then Beaverton Literacy.
Yeah.
How do you know what number to put in?
You'll be sent that information. Lyndon and Jim are still finalizing all the details of the class schedule. But all the volunteers, all the teachers, maybe all volunteers will receive that information.
So it'll be
If you don't, send me a message or send Linda a message and we'll get it to you, but it should still be on its way.
and you would use that same number for each beginning of each class.
Correct.
It's
It'll be the
not like
same
it
login.
rolls on or something.
Right. It'll be constant. And likewise, the student link won't change. We very occasionally have, and for reasons that we didn't understand, seen a Zoom link change. That is like the student link change in an unexplained way. But it happens so infrequently that for all intents and purposes, you can assume that the student link will never change and your login will never change.
Okay, thanks.
We're doing what we can within the confines of what we have control over to make it as simple as possible for you and for the students. There was one other thing that came up in the class on Monday that I wanted to touch on, and I think, again, we lightly go through this later on today. So I set up a fake meeting today in order with myself, so you can see two images of me. One is on my cell phone, the other is on my computer screen. And I wanted to just make a couple of quick points here. One of the things I said is if for some reason you want to rename your students on the screen, because, for example, maybe they're using wife's phone or husband's phone and it's got a different name and it's not the one you want to remember, as they come into the class, onto the meeting, you can change their names if you want to. You can also change yours. If you don't want Beaverton Literacy Council to be displayed at your class, you can, if you go to your image on screen and just hover over it, this blue menu option will appear. And there are 3 dots under that, in that little cluster there. One of the buttons has 3 dots. If you hit the 3-dot button, you get a small menu. And one of the menus is rename. That renaming option, as opposed to doing something on the BLC Zoom page that I was showing you a moment ago, the rename option you see here only changes what the name that's displayed for you at that meeting. So it doesn't make, we had a problem with teachers wanting to have their name appear and then changing their name in the BLC Zoom account and then having the next person to use the account for a different class have their name be something else. And it's just a little bit clunky, but it's much easier anyway to just rename yourself at the beginning of class if that's something that bothers you. And as I said, you can also change the names of the students. So if you hover over the student picture, so in this case, I was getting into the meeting by a link, not for my cell phone. So again, you hover over the image of any one of your students. I could do this with any of you right now. I'll see ask to unmute if you're muted and a 3-button menu access button. If you open up that menu, there's a fairly long list there. One of them is rename. So I could rename you from, rename it from Scott's iPhone to something else if I wanted to. That's easy. One thing that's different and that may be useful to those of you that have assistants. If you want to make an assistant a co-host for the meeting, you can hit the Make Co-host button and give them that assignment. That's different than making them a host, which is the button or the menu item above that. I know this is a lot, but I apologize. I'm not sure how else to go through it. If you want to make your assistant co-host, they'll be able to, for example, share their screen. Nobody else in the meeting normally will be able to share a screen except for you. But if you make somebody a co-host, they can. So you can give, they can, hey, okay, I had an assistant last year named Maggie. Maggie, I'm making you co-host. Can you take over? And she could take over to give a part of a lesson, for example. You both then have those privileges. If you were to make your assistant host, which is above that, not co-host, but host, you would give up the privilege of sharing your screen. You would give up the meeting, control of the meeting. So I think generally it makes more sense if you want to enable somebody else, like your assistant, to share screen in order to carry out instruction, make them co-host. And you don't give up any privileges that way. Does that make sense? As with everything that we talked about in class 1 and everything that we're going to talk about in the remainder of this class, I strongly suggest you either set up a fake meeting with yourself, which is what I normally do, or with a friend, somebody that's willing to go through that with you. Because it's really good to kind of get familiar with this stuff so you can do it comfortably when the time comes. Any questions about that whole business?
I would think it would be better to have the students rename themselves.
They can do that, but they can do that if you want to ask them each time to do it. But again, if the example would be they borrowed a phone and they're going to give that phone back to the person who they borrowed it from, and maybe they don't want to mess with that.
Oh, but you said that they can't see what you rename them, or can they?
They can't see what you rename them. They will see what you rename yourself.
Okay.
Any other questions? Again, experiment with this stuff. It's easy to experiment with and good to know. Let's see. Before we get into the class, I wanted to make sure you had all looked at some of the other documents you've been sent. And I apologize for the fact that you've been kind of deluged with information, and maybe it's been hard to kind of keep it all organized, not just in these classes, but mailings that you've been getting from the BLC board for the last couple of months. The one you're looking at right now, which is called volunteer welcome document, you all should have seen, and it's probably the best kind of compendium of all the key links that have come out so far. So there's, there are policy documents, there are, information about signing up for BLC, Beaverton Literacy Council course, the one that you're going through right now. There's a bunch of stuff there. The one I specifically want to point out, though, is this link, online curriculum called Intercambio. If you follow that link, well, is it going to let me? I have it open, I believe. If you follow that link, you'll get to this document. And there are a couple of really important links on this document. One is access links to the teacher book and the student books online. So the teacher books and the student books are a little bit different in that there's a lot of additional material in the teacher books. So the only reason for including the student books is so you might know what they're seeing, exactly what they're seeing. Also, audio track links for teachers. So a lot of the lessons come with audio tracks. I want to show you something about that as well. So if I follow the audio track links, we're now several layers deep here in the welcome document. I want to point out that there's only one track, one audio file for all of a book. So I'm going to be teaching level 2. We're going to start with the left book. All the teachers are going to be starting with the left book. And that entire book has only one audio file, which means that if you're going to be running through some of the audio, so I'm going to that right now, you'd better position yourself, you know, or at least kind of get an idea as to what the time marker is for the little bit of audio that you actually want to play. So one of the things I mentioned or emphasized in the first class was that it's really important, I think, and I haven't been giving classes, by the way, on Intercombio through Zoom, so this is a new thing for me as well. But just having played with it a little bit, I think it's very important to have all of your materials more or less ready to go. And something like the audio tracks that are 2 layers deep in some document that you were sent a couple of months ago, and for which you have to pick a particular position to make it useful to your students, definitely better to have everything queued up before class begins. So again, that's a little bit of a digression. It has nothing to do really with what we're going to be covering today. But I wanted to not have you discover that at an inconvenient time. Mary?
Is there a password to get into this?
There is no password. I don't believe there's a password to get into this if you go through that series of links.
So the welcome document with the Intercombio link, because I thought I tried that last night, but I'll try it again.
Yeah, if not, I mean, I just now I didn't have to enter a password. I mean, you witnessed that. I think I showed in the last class, and I think you were there, how you can just go directly to an Intercombio link, and you've been sent login information if you want to do that as well. So somewhere in your stack of welcome documents, there's one that included the login for Beaverton Literacy Council onto Intercombio. If you can't find it after this class, I don't have it handy. If you can't find it after this class, send me a note and I'll get it back to you.
I'll look for it in email if I can't find it.
Yeah, likewise, if you have any trouble with anything that we've talked about in this class or in the prior class, just send me a message and I'll do my best to help you out. All right, so I'm going to back out of this. I wanted to just, again, expose you to that. And let's see, without here we are. Without further ado, wait a second. All right, let's go through it this way. Into the material. So today's agenda is mostly focused on sharing and annotating. So and hopefully we'll have time. Hopefully I didn't totally screw up our agenda here. We'll go into a breakout session for a little while. And the reason the homework said to come in with a blank document was so that you could practice on that blank document annotating. You could type in some things and circle and do other annotations like we're going to discuss. Before we get to that, though, I want to go through some additional menu items and some other things that you'll be able to use when you're the host of a meeting or leading your class. This page we already went through. So I've already talked about how you get into a BLC Zoom account to host a meeting and that your assistants use the student link, and all your students will use the student link as well. As host, this is the menu at the bottom. I think it's pretty close to the menu you all have. Over the next 2 classes, we'll be talking about each of the things, menu items that I pointed out by the arrows. One thing that's special for the host is they have a fair amount of control over how the other students are involved in a meeting. You can, for example, remove somebody from a meeting and they won't be able to get back in. So and I think I mentioned this last time, if somebody's being really unruly, or, if they leave for some reason and don't come back and you think it would be better for security reasons just to remove them, you can do that. To do that, you'd hit remove. So you'd find their name, go to more, and hit remove. Pretty unlikely. You can rename them as you can directly by controlling their image or by getting that button on the image. You can control them from here, rename them from here as well. You can make them from host, make them a host from here. You can also put them in a waiting room, which is a slightly less aggressive way to take them out of the meeting temporarily. Again, I can't think of a really good scenario for when this would happen. Hopefully you'll never need to do that. But if you put them in a waiting room, they can come back from the waiting room. If you remove them, they're gone from the meeting entirely. You can mute them. You can mute everybody. You can ask them to unmute from here, just like you can on their image. You can ask them to turn on their video from here, just as you can from their image on the meeting. So there's a lot of overlap here between what you can do from that menu item and what you can do with the menu that's at the top of their image. Oops. Which is made here. This again, this is the same thing that you saw on that separate presentation, mini presentation that I put together. Yeah, if somebody has their video turned off and they're muted, so or not paying attention, you can ask them to start their video. But we've already gone through these items for the most part, the ones that are critical. This next, 2 or 3 slides, these next 2 or 3 slides are pretty important. You've seen some of this already, but this is a good breakdown of the submenus and so on. So when you go to share screen, if you hit this, kind of advanced options arrow as opposed to hitting the share screen button, you can get a range of sharing options. If you choose advanced sharing options, the gray bar at the bottom, you can actually override the defaults that are set up on the account now where only the host can share. So in an exceptional situation where you don't just want to be able to share your screen and maybe allow your assistant to share screen as co-host, but you want everybody to be able to share screen. You've got some activity that requires that everybody share their screen or have the option to share the screen. You can override the defaults just for this meeting for a period of time by going into advanced sharing options and changing it from only host to all participants. So just know it's there, and maybe when the time comes when you decide you have a sharing activity that might require that capability, you can probably go back and remind yourself that this is the procedure to go through to enable it. Make sense? Okay. You're going to be on paid Zoom accounts, so you do have the option to record meetings, record classes. Just in order to have a record of these volunteer classes that we've done, I think Linda's going to, in case new volunteers come in later, rather than having a new class, they can go through the videos. This class is actually being recorded right now. Normally, we believe you're not going to want to record your students. And we certainly believe that because some of your students may be pretty sensitive about privacy for whatever reason, you don't want to record without their permission. So the accounts are not set up to by default record. They're capable of recording, but please make sure if you decide for some reason you're doing something special and you want to do that, that you get explicit permission from everybody in the class.
Just verbal is enough?
I would say verbal is enough. I mean, we're trying to be very sensitive to privacy concerns that students might have. A lot of them may have precarious situations with respect to customs and immigration, for example. And, we're not doing cold calls to people. a lot of things that we might otherwise be wanting, like to students. I have a student who wants to be contacted by phone before classes begin, and I'll do that, but only because she said that is her preference. Otherwise, to me, calling a student would absolutely be unacceptable because it's a violation of privacy. Likewise, recording. Yeah, I think a verbal, if they say it's okay, it's okay. Any other questions on that? I think this is something useless, but the slide is here, so we'll mention it. You can, US hosts can choose to spotlight your video image. And what that means is that image will always be on the screen as the primary image in the class. So if you're in speaker view, for example, whoever is speaking their image is bigger if they kind of come front and center because they're speaking. And that can be a little bit jarring, so I don't think that's the best thing to use. But I don't think just simply, my personal opinion, just spotlighting your video is not really necessary. Better to be in gallery view. If your students are mostly in gallery view, then they're gonna see everybody, and whoever is speaking will have a highlighted frame around their image, but their image won't constantly be blown up. That's probably the default view that most people want to have. But you can have yours always be the spotlighted video if you want to for some reason. In the next class on Friday, in Friday's class, which is a little bit shorter, I think, than this one, we'll talk a little bit about some of the security options. There's nothing too exciting there, but we'll go through it. There's a good video included in, actually, I'll just jump to this again. In the welcome letter, there's a link here to great training videos. And a handful of those have been, a lot of these came from Intercombio, and a few were videos that we produced. We strongly recommend that you take, they're not too time consuming. There's less than an hour of video time, I think, between all of them. But take the time to look at these. The reason that's mentioned here, oops. All right, now I lost my place. I'll just get back down to it. Okay, there's a good one on breakout rooms and how to use breakout rooms. It's kind of hard to simulate in a session like this. I can put you in a breakout room, and I'm going to be doing that later on, but I can't show you the process for doing breakout rooms. So take a look at that great training video link that's on the volunteer welcome letter. The breakout room video is there, but there's some other good stuff from Intercombio that you probably ought to take a look at, just because you'll find it. I think it's pretty edifying. But yeah, that's there. Okay. Online whiteboards and annotating. If I'm sharing screen, as I am right now, and if I move my cursor up through this green and red bar here, is repeated at the top of my screen, because this is in the presentation, and I've got it on my screen right now because I'm literally sharing the screen. If I move my cursor up through that bar, this menu appears. It'll disappear if I don't do something with the menu. It only comes up for a few seconds and then disappears unless you're using it. But if I go through my UR screen sharing green bar, it appears. If I hit annotate, which I just did, I can annotate the image that we're looking at. Do you see a kind of jagged oval around annotating? I take your silence to mean yes. I can add text. Oops. Added it in white. So you can put you can underline things, you can circle things, you can change the colors of the things that you're circling and the color of your text, which is what I had to do because for some reason the text was white when I first put it on there. It's a fairly versatile set of annotations that you can do. So it's good to practice these. These are the ones, text, draw, and format, that I've used. You can make the lines thicker. You know, there's some other things that you can make the font bigger. There are other things that you can do. But aside from these, there's probably not too much that you'll want to do. You can also, by the way, once you've invoked the annotation toolbar, which is this, you can move that around if you need to in order to expose the image that you want to annotate. Let me pause there. Any questions?
So it looks like you can undo your drawing.
Yeah, you can undo it piece by piece. So there, I undid the color change, undid the text. Let's see. Yeah, so I've undone everything. You can also use erase in a similar way, kind of. Using erase isn't in order, it allows you to do it out of order. Other questions? Okay, again, this menu appears only momentarily. Once you invoke the annotation menu, you know, once you've hit annotate, oops, which I'm not trying to do right now. Once you've hit annotate, the annotation menu persists. It doesn't immediately disappear. So as long as you want it there until you hit that little X, you're in business. By the way, if you want to hit the little X, you'll have to get the you know, if you're in text mode and text is highlighted, for example, your cursor isn't normal at that point. It's going to want to do text, or if you have draw hit, it's going to want to do draw. So to move the menu, you have to hit mouse, and then it acts as a mouse again. You can practice that in a moment when you're in breakout. One thing I wanted to point out, and I'm actually going to do this a different way. Do you see a picture? Do you see the presentation, or do you see a picture right now?
See shared screen, whiteboard.
Okay, you see a whiteboard. Okay, I'm going to.
Shared screen as whiteboard.
Yeah. I'm going to stop share. I'm going to reshare. Any document, this is our dog. And I really just wanted to show you the dog. And while I'm doing that, I'll make the point that anything that you can, any document or even your desktop itself that you want to annotate or you want to show to your students, you can. So even though this has nothing to do with, it's not a presentation, it's not on Google Drive, it's something on my hard drive, I'm equally able to, you know, annotate it if I want to. So if you have a PowerPoint open, or if you even have a web page that has a video that you've paused, any of those types of things can be annotated because it's just something that's superimposed onto what, if you're working off your desktop, what's on your desktop. I'm going to get back to where I was. Okay. So this page is just to illustrate, you know, I'd follow a link to slides in a PowerPoint, show that they can be annotated, follow to a doc in Word, show that it can be annotated, just to show you that the annotation is a pretty versatile thing. So now we're going to go into breakouts. The whole purpose of the breakout is for you to practice annotating, sharing your screen. You have to do it while you're sharing your screen. Practice sharing your screen, showing your blank document, opening the annotation menu, and then doing some simple annotating. And then you can rotate to somebody else and allow them to do exactly the same thing. So the annotation I'd like you to try is, again, first open your blank document, which hopefully you have ready because that was homework. If not, just use whatever document you can find. Annotate the document with text, with line draw. Try making a color change so you get to use reformatting. Then erase an annotation and then clear it. So take a picture of the screen and then I'm going to break you up. Does everybody have it? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and create the breakout rooms and we'll launch right into that. I'm going to give you 8 minutes. So to about 6:45.
Super cool.
How was that?
Awesome.
I had an issue with, I think I entered the class from the wrong direction because I don't have any of the annotation tools, but I got the gist of it.
Okay, if you can, what platform are you using? Are you on a PC or a
I'm
Mac?
I'm on a Chromebook.
Chromebook. Ah, there's one I haven't played with before.
Well, next time I'll use my Mac. It's just old.
Yeah, I would bet it should function the same on a Chromebook.
Yeah, I think I entered the class from the wrong spot.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Not sure. But if you have any trouble between now and the time classes begin, let me know. And if I can help in any way,
Okay, I'll do some research after we're done.
okay. So everybody managed to use the tools that were on the little assignment?
So I couldn't get the menu to come up, but I'll work on it.
You couldn't get it to come up.
So I got the screen share, but I couldn't get the annotation bar with all the menu choices, like text, draw, format.
Okay. If you continue to, and give it a try, maybe after class, and if you continue to struggle, don't go on for, too long, just contact me and I'll see if I can work through it with you.
Thanks.
We are having, I don't know when the next one is scheduled. And I'm not sure that the timing has been even shared yet with you guys, but we're gonna have some drop-in sessions solely for the purpose of following up on things like this and how you log in to BLC and how you access Intercambio, anything that you may need to be prepared for the beginning of classes. These are just, it's like office hours of a professor. So somebody on the board will have an hour that they've set aside. They'll be on Zoom waiting. I think I'm on next Thursday for whatever that's worth. And we'll just wait. And if somebody has a question and wants to set up a pretend meeting or just wants to ask the questions, they can do it there.
And
But yeah.
will we access that by a link that you'll be sending, or is there another method?
Yeah, well, Linda's preparing the message, and yeah, there'll be probably just one common link for any of the drop-in sessions, regardless of the time, regardless of the day. But I think she's trying to just make sure that she knows when everybody's available calendar-wise and kind of figure out what the slots are going to be. But yeah, you'll receive a link, so there won't be any mystery for how you
Okay.
reach us. All right, I'm going to share screen again. So, oops. Okay, we're here, and I think this is the last slide. So we had the breakout session. We are done with this. So, yeah, I'm going to have to back out of share screen and reshare. I shared it directly to that as opposed to sharing my desktop.
So does this automatically spotlight us when we're talking, or are you clicking on people?
Well, no, you are automatically spotlighted. So, yeah, when you spoke just now, a green frame appeared around your image.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Yes. Mhm.
I don't know, for some reason, one isn't appearing around my image from my point of view, but maybe it is on your screens. But I know that I'm speaking, so it doesn't matter. Let's go to the book. So you should have all seen the sample lesson number 2, just another one for you to take a look at, provide some sort of reference, you know, kind of a, I don't know, a prototype or a template for how you might want to set up your own lesson plans. On that, I personally don't put as much detail in mine as Linda does in hers, but that's entirely a matter for you to decide. Some people like a lot of detail, and some people don't like to have quite as much detail. So you're not constrained to what she's done here. However, these are excellent examples. So the thought process that comes out, if you look at the way she set this up, and the thought that she's given on how to incorporate different formats on screen and on Zoom, I think she's done just a terrific job. With that, I'm going to go to, so here's the welcome document again. I'm going to go through this process of going to Intercambio just to remind you of how it works. So,
There's,
yes?
it doesn't, on mine, it just says Zoom. It's a Zoom screen.
Right.
Oh, okay.
That's all I see.
All right, I'm not sure what I did wrong here. Let's try this again.
Okay, I just wanted to let you know.
Yeah, thanks for calling. Can you see it now?
Yes.
What do you see now?
Yes, I see it now. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go back to where I was. All right, so this is the volunteer document that that we looked at a moment ago. So I'm just going to follow that link like we did before. I'm going to go to the teacher book link. Oh, interesting. Okay. So let me correct myself. Even though the audio file link on that, the audio file link here takes you to the audio tracks, these books, these book links take you to the instructions for getting onto Intercambio. Now, once you've gotten on Intercambio, so once you've, logged in per those instructions, you'll come to this screen if you're looking for teacher books. I'm pre-logged in, so that's why I was able to get to it pretty quickly, but I whiffed on thinking that the welcome document included, actually got you there directly. That was not correct. Y'all understand what I did incorrectly or said incorrectly a moment ago? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we're going to go to 3 left. And we are on teacher book page 88. I'm only doing this to remind you how easy this is to navigate and what the navigation looks like. I don't think there's much value to going through all the details of the lesson. So I would slide over to page 88 because most of the students are going to be working from cell phones, hopefully cell phones that are in landscape mode as opposed to portrait mode. I'm going to zoom in and position it for whatever part of the lesson I want to start out with. Typically, as Linda does, at the beginning of a new topic, a new lesson, start off by looking at the picture, talking a little bit about the picture, seeing what the students already know, what vocabulary they have access to, what sort of thoughts that whole thing evokes. In this case, you'd then play the if you wanted to. You have a script, by the way. This is a script for track 15, which is the audio track that connects to this picture. If you didn't want to, get the track all set up and have that be one more thing that you have to prepare for prior to the meeting, you could always just read through the audio track. But know that it's here. And to be honest with you, I don't think this script appears in the student book. But that'd be a good example of the type of question that you would ask by checking out the student book to see, will we be able to have 2 people read this? Or am I going to have to read through this if I don't actually have the audio track prepared. I don't think that is on the student in the student book. So if you wanted to read it, you'd be reading all parts. And then she'd proceed with the remainder of the lesson. So once again, you're reminded about how you can navigate on Intercombio. It's, I think, super, super easy. I don't think there's anything here that I want to point out. I'll remind you that if you want to play a video, when you go to share your screen, you want to hit computer sound. So your computer, at the same time it's pumping out sound through your computer at exactly that same moment, it's pumping the same sound to the students, so the image and the sound line up for the students as well. That's really the only feasible way, only good way to watch a video, share a video with your students. You have to hit that computer sound button on the share screen option list. And we talked about that in the prior meeting. If any of you try that and can't figure it out, send me a note. And I don't think there's anything else I wanted to highlight here. No. So we covered a lot of territory. Are there any questions? There's another homework assignment, and the body of this homework assignment, the most important part, is for you to try preparing a lesson plan. So you've got a couple of examples. You'll get a third example of a third lesson plan on Friday. But between now and Friday, I'm not gonna go through them like it's homework that's gonna be graded. But I think it's helpful for you to go through the process of thinking that through, because it may generate questions, things that you want to talk about at Friday's class. So give it a shot. You're gonna have to do it eventually anyway. Start with the first day, then you'll be ahead of the game.
Scott,
Yes.
I noticed that you said chat, either sending a message to everyone or to the host only. So this is the intention, right?
Right. So
Let students chat among themselves.
they can't chat privately between themselves. So you and Steve couldn't have a private conversation not shared with the rest of the class. That's the way we're set up by default. That's a setting that's controllable, but by default, you can either chat publicly, which you did. When you sent that message, if anybody else had chat open, they would have seen your message. But you can't just choose one person to have a side conversation with. You know, in the board's opinion, that would be kind of counterproductive. Other questions?
Is there a mapped out lesson plan to follow?
What do you mean, like a template that doesn't have any?
No, just to sort of know like what pages we should be done with at a certain date or.
Okay. So on the first day, made a couple of comments along those lines. One is that everybody's starting off with a left book, regardless of level. The Intercombio curriculum is set up so you can have like one teacher teaching left, one teacher teaching right, and then they switch halfway through the year. There's no built-in order that's implicit in the material. But everybody's going to start off with left, and we want everybody to kind of reach the midpoint at roughly the same time. We estimate that each lesson should be about 3 classes. So if you look, there are 14 lessons in each book. That's should be about 3 classes for each of those lessons. So that's a budgeting estimate that you can use. And if we're off a little bit by the end of the quarter or whatever, that's fine. We can kind of get things rejiggered.
Okay.
Since you weren't, I guess you weren't part of that conversation. Most teachers, especially at higher levels, use a lot of supplementary material and don't follow the book super closely. So as long as you're kind of keeping track, they use it as a framework, as a guide for what the subject matter should be, but not literally doing exercise by exercise, topic by topic, exactly the way it's laid out in the book. So either way, you can use the budgeting guideline I mentioned as a way to get to the end at the right time.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Anything else? Well, thank you all for being so attentive.
Thank
But
you.
by all means, send me a note if you have any problems.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you, Scott.